too much. 6 games in, and he's got 1,092 passing yards. He's got 5 touchdown passes during that time. You can't do that unless you have a dominant run game, or you're going to, like the Niners do, where you're just like, okay, we're going to line up and we're going to get 200 plus rushing yards a game. The Bears aren't doing that. They're not throwing the ball down the field. The offense looks so limited. It's like when you watch a college game and it's like, how the hell does this Division I program have a quarterback that can't move the football? Like, especially when it gets into bowl seasons and some of these teams pop up and they're just atrocious to watch. That's Chicago's offense right now. They're not good to watch. And look, if Pinheiro makes that field goal and they get the win, maybe it's a different conversation. But the fact is, it's the Chargers. They're traveling over to Chicago. You got them at a 1 p.m. spot. They're banged up. Keenan Allen isn't 100% healthy. Melvin Gordon hasn't done anything all season long. That should be a game that you win. Even as a mediocre football team, that's a game that you have to find a way to win. And they found a way to lose, which is, as you said, usually the Chargers' MO at this point. So let's talk a little NFC East. Let's talk about your Eagles. You had something to cheer about. They went into Buffalo. They got a big win versus a Buffalo team that, again, I don't feel like they've really played anyone that spectacular. The only team they played was the Patriots, and they lost that game. And look, close doesn't count anything but horseshoes and hand grenades. So the fact they only lost by 6, I really don't want to hear that. They still lost the game. And then they have the Eagles come in. Not great weather. So did that Buffalo weather. And the Eagles took it to them, really pounded the ball in that game. Got a big win, kind of resets their season. And they have a pretty favorable schedule coming up, that being Philly. So what'd you think of your Eagles? Did they give you some hope? I know you've been pretty hopeless with your Jets and Eagles. So how you feeling now?
I don't know if that game did anything for me, to be honest with you. I mean, beating a Bills defense and scoring 31 on them. Yeah, sure. I think that's helpful. I think that's helpful for your psyche. But, this week they go in, and if they beat the downtrodden Bears, I mean, how do I really assess where they're at? Because we know that their offense, if they really put all the pieces together, can score points. Now, Wentz only threw for 172 yards because he had Miles Sanders and Howard both went for over 70 yards rushing. So I think that just helped them control the game. Now, obviously, one of Sanders' runs was a huge long run, and that's where he got his yardage. But Alshon Jeffrey, Ertz, there's just not big numbers coming out of this offense. So I'm worried that, as we've seen with teams that are better offensively than what the Bills are, the Eagles tend to get behind very quickly. They tend to give up a lot of points. And I just don't think their offense is clicking well enough to keep up with teams like that. So this 500 record that the Eagles have, my concern now at this point being 4-4. I mean, I didn't think they'd lose 4 games all year, really. They've already got 4 losses in 8 games. I think there's more losses yet ahead on the schedule, because of the way that their defense plays so poorly in big spots, especially against teams that can put up points. Justin, it's just kind of crazy to me that, I mean, look, you're talking about a team who, Atlanta at 1-7, their only win came against the Eagles. It's not a good thing, this team right now. I think they're off. Something is not working. A lot of it's the defense, but there's just other pieces that are not clicking together.
Wow. I'm disappointed. I thought you'd be more excited about your Eagles. All right, I will talk you off the ledge, okay? Because I think the fact is the Eagles are 4-4 at the halfway point, and they haven't had their bye yet. They get a game against the Bears, which is at home, and a game they should win. So they should go into their bye at 5-4. Then they have 2 weeks to get ready for the hardest game on their schedule, and that's the Patriots coming to Philly on November 17th. Then they turn around and play the Seahawks. Then they get the Dolphins, Giants, Redskins. So in my opinion, Eric, over the next, 6 weeks, this team should go 5-1. And if they don't go 5-1, then I think you have to be concerned and be worried about this team. But they should be able to beat either the Patriots or the Seahawks. One of those teams, they have to figure out a way to win that game. And then that team is in a completely different position. Then you're talking about a team that's 9-5 that has a home game with Dallas that could end up deciding who wins the NFC East in week 16. And then they finish out the year against the Giants. So I actually think they saved their season with a win in Buffalo, because instead of being 3-5, they find themselves at 500. And that's a much easier number to keep pace with the Cowboys, who we've talked about have a pretty difficult schedule coming up, more difficult than what the Eagles had, because the Cowboys got gifted 3 easy games in the beginning of the year. And now the Eagles are starting to get some of those games that filter in. So I actually think that they're in a pretty good spot with this team. And look, it doesn't matter if you don't tank, if you're not the Falcons where you're 1-7, if you can just hang in there or you have a chance at your division or you have a chance at your wild card. We've seen that what these teams do in the first 8 to 10 weeks of the season typically is meaningless because it's all about how they're playing coming into the playoffs, how hot they're playing. And you definitely don't want to peak too early with some of these teams. Even when we'll talk about New England, I don't think they've been challenged yet either. And now all of a sudden they're going to get thrown into a really difficult spot of their schedule. So I think what the Eagles have done, they've played some difficult teams. They haven't just played cupcakes. They've been challenged. They've gone through some of this stress in the locker room. You had Scandrick going on undisputed, ripping the team and ripping, I think Malcolm Jenkins is who he was pointing at. And maybe it was something like that that took to sort of light a fire under this team because they definitely played better in a tough spot that most people had them. They were the underdog. Most people had picked Buffalo to win that game. And the fact that they went up there and laid a double-digit win on Buffalo and that defense, I thought it was pretty impressive. So I actually think the Eagles are in a better spot than you think. Do you feel better now?
Well, I hope you're right. I definitely hope you're right. We're going to find out when they play a team like the Patriots because I think the Patriots could come in there and crush them. And that makes a lot of these other wins look meaningless because when you get to playoff time, how good will the Eagles really be if they go up against a Green Bay or a Saints team or a 49ers team or whoever who really could roll them at that point?
But I think that's not the end of their season if they lose it. The key for them is, okay, if they drop to the Patriots, the following week they have Seattle coming in for a late game, Sunday night game at 8 o'clock. So you've got Seattle flying across. So Philly's got 3 straight home games and a bye built in there. So they're not going to be traveling for a month. Even if they drop one of those games, if they can win the games they're supposed to, even that stretch I said, if they can go 5-1 going into that Dallas game, they're going to be in the mix. There's no way. I don't feel like Dallas is going to go 5-1 over their next 6 based on who they play. So I think that division could be super close. Now, if they drop a game to the Bears or if they lose to the Giants or the Redskins, then I think you might be back on the ledge because at that point, they don't have a ton of margin for error because of the early season going 4-4. But if they win against the teams they should, and when you look at what Washington's doing, they don't even know who their quarterback is. The Giants are just happy if they score 3 touchdowns and stay in a game. And the Dolphins are more than happy to continue to lose so they can tank for the number 1 pick. So those are 3 games they absolutely, if they find a way to lose one of those, I'll push you off the ledge because I'll probably be jumping right behind you after this take. But I just think they're not in as bad a position. It's not as bad as it could have been based on how they started. I'll put it that way.
I was going to say, speaking of the Dolphins, wouldn't it be just wonderful if the Jets, the team I root for on the AFC side, goes and loses to the Dolphins this week? I mean, oh gosh, the Jets are a mess, Justin.
A mess is offended that you would even compare them to the Jets at this point. This team is, all right, number one, we didn't get to talk about because we didn't do a show last week, but you got Sam Darnold, who I think the ghost of Sam Darnold actually played in that Monday night game against the Patriots. That was abysmal. I'm glad we didn't do a show because I actually think I said on the episode before that the Jets could be sneaky for an upset and could stay within 10. They even scored 10 points. Sam Darnold seeing ghosts on the sideline, and the Jets are all upset about that. Like, none of the millions of people that watched 4 of the worst interceptions that we've ever seen. I didn't need Sam Darnold saying he saw ghosts to know that there was something screwed up in his head and that the Patriots were just in his mind. That was horrible, Eric. And then you go into this trade deadline, and as bad as the Jets are, their players think that they're untouchable. Why would any player outside of potentially Sam Darnold think that they are untouchable on this team? They haven't won anything. They're not going anywhere. Why would they think that based on what we've seen with the NFL and sort of this movement of similar to what the NBA has done, why would any of them think that they're untouchable?
I have no idea. Have they not been around the business of NFL football?
Do they not watch film of themselves on Monday or Tuesday?
Yeah, exactly. They've got a 1-win record. So clearly everybody other than Darnold, which I mean, even at this point, not that you would trade a franchise quarterback. He's not going to have games that bad continually, but certainly a cause for concern. That game, I'm glad you're right. I'm glad we didn't have a show last week because we might have had to do some serious editing there. But in either case, the fact that the Jets were floating around the ideas of Adams or even Bell being traded and couldn't find the right deals, these guys just have to understand that's the NFL. And when you're a 1-win team nearly halfway through the season, if you have an opportunity to start stockpiling picks or to get other pieces and get a 2-for-1, get more value out of the salary cap and out of the whole entire roster rather than one guy, then I think you're going to do it, because clearly they're still in a rebuilding mode. They're not there. They haven't arrived. They're certainly way worse than I was hoping they would be when we did the preview shows earlier this year. Unbelievable how bad this team has the potential to be with what I thought they had behind them. I mean, Le'Veon Bell, to his credit, has actually seemed to stay pretty positive in and around the locker room and on social media and things like that, despite the fact that they're really wasting this opportunity that they have with his talent. I was never happy about him going there from an attitude standpoint, but his attitude seems fine right now. So from a talent standpoint, we know he has the talent.
He's got his money.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it helps when you have money.
He got paid. So I think that speaks more to him and what we talked about even in Pittsburgh, of this guy was more concerned about his money than ever wins and losses.
Well, if he's happy about the money and still playing well, fine. I can deal with that. But he's really, his talents are being wasted in that offense right now. And Darnold can't he finds Robbie Anderson once in a while for a phenomenal play. But other than that, I mean, you've got Demaryius Thomas, you've got Jamison Crowder, you've got pieces there, and this franchise quarterback can't find them. I'd have to say I'm hugely concerned about this franchise, and I'll end it by saying this. Adam Gase, if this isn't a one and done for him, I don't know what to say anymore.
Well, not even that. Then you've got the fact that you've got an offensive lineman that's going out and getting his own surgery. And you've got a whole issue there where we're posting MRIs and x-rays on social media. There's just a disconnect with that front office and that team where they may need to go the route of the Dolphins and just start trading off parts and look into the future, because they're not going anywhere with this team right now. They're not going anywhere. Look, you can't throw Sam Darnold out there where you can't protect him and he's getting knocked around and he doesn't even have time to read a defense. And then he's mechanically making extremely poor throws, making bad decisions, and you're crushing his confidence. Oh, and you're getting him killed on a fairly regular basis every time he drops back. So they've got a lot of issues to fix within the front office and the coaching staff in this team. There's a disconnect that they have to figure out. And look, none of them, I know Jamal Adams is upset, but to compare himself to Aaron Donald, that the Rams don't take calls for them or the Patriots take calls on Brady, you're not there, dude. You're not at that point. You've never been on a team that's done anything. Both of those guys are coming off of Super Bowl runs. You haven't even sniffed the playoffs yet. So get to 500 before you call yourself untouchable or untradeable. Make plays every single week that make us think that you're the number one safety in the league, because I don't think anybody thinks that about him. How could you on a team that's got one win? So win some football games, and then you may be untouchable. Up to that point, the Jets have every right to listen to phone calls. I'm pretty sure at this point, the way Darnold is playing, if someone called them and was drunk off their ass and offered 2 firsts for Darnold, they would take that deal at this point, because I don't think, again, if you haven't shown anything and your team stinks and you're not winning football games, you've got to be able to press the reset button. It's like the NBA, Eric, and we're starting to see more of this stuff take place. We saw the Dolphins do it. They took on a bad contract and got draft picks because they had cap space. That is an NBA move. We talk about that all the time, and we'll talk about it this year when it comes up to the trade deadline, that one of these bad teams that have cap room are going to eat a really bad contract because they're going to get a first-round pick back, or they're going to get a second-round pick. They're going to get some kind of value. The NBA is creeping into the NFL, this model of, you know what? Mediocrity sucks. Being between that 6-10 and 9-7 mark where you're missing the playoffs or you're just short, and you're getting that mid-teen draft pick where it is a 50-50 chance on any player that you take. They're probably not going to be an immediate impact player, and you stay in that cycle that it's just better to just tank. 1 year at 1-15 or 2-14 is better than 5 years at between 6-10 and 7-9. And that's been the NBA model. You know what? We're not going to be the 11 or 12 seed. We're just going to tank, hope we get a transcendent player in the draft, and turn our franchise around. And I think that's the model you're seeing in the NFL. The Dolphins are definitely doing it. And I think that's why you're seeing more trade talks pick up, where these teams that are bad are willing to trade players we think they normally would never have traded because they're not going anywhere with them, and they just want the assets and the eventual cap relief from having to sign a guy like Adams in a few years to a monster deal.